First contact. The moonlight cast strange shadows through the bedroom window as Sarah, the cosmic executioner, materialized in a soft blue glow. Her silver armor gleamed in the darkness, and her black visor hid eyes that had seen 1,000 worlds. The small device on her wrist blinked steadily, pointing toward the sleeping human on the bed. Target located, she whispered to herself, her voice emotionless and cold. The human, Mark Wilson, lay peacefully under a thin blanket, completely unaware of the deadly warrior standing in his room. Sarah raised her hand, activating her scanning systems. According to the Cosmic Council, this human had discovered knowledge that could destroy the balance of the universe. He needed to be eliminated. But something was different tonight. As her scanners swept over Mark's sleeping form, they detected unusual energy patterns she had never seen before. Sarah tilted her head, confused by the readings. The human's brain was extremely active, creating waves of energy that danced across her scanner like cosmic auroras. Impossible, she muttered, taking a step closer. In all her years as an executioner, she had never hesitated. Yet here she was, fascinated by these strange patterns. Her training had taught her about all known species in the universe, but nothing about this. Mark shifted in his sleep, a small smile playing across his lips. Sarah froze, her hand automatically reaching for her energy blade. But the human didn't wake. Instead, he mumbled something about flying and chased after something in his dreams. Sarah's curiosity grew stronger. Dreams were considered a myth among the cosmic races. The idea that consciousness could create its own reality during sleep was deemed impossible. Yet here was clear evidence that humans could do exactly that. She activated her armor's recording systems, gathering data about the dream patterns. The Council would want to know about this before she completed her mission. At least, that's what she told herself. Deep inside, in a place she didn't acknowledge, she simply wanted to understand. Hours passed as Sarah stood motionless, watching the human dream. Her scanners recorded thousands of different patterns, each unique and beautiful in its complexity. Sometimes Mark would smile. Other times his face would show concern, and occasionally he would even laugh softly in his sleep. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the window, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She needed more time to study this phenomenon. The Council's orders were clear: eliminate the target immediately. But they had never mentioned anything about dreams. Surely this discovery was important enough to warrant further investigation. Sarah took one last look at the sleeping human before activating her cloaking device. She would hide in the room, observe him during his waking hours, and continue studying these dreams at night. Just for a few days, she told herself, just long enough to understand. What she didn't realize was that her decision had already started to change her. For the first time in her existence as an executioner, she had chosen curiosity over duty. The tiny seed of doubt had been planted in her perfect soldier's mind. As Mark's alarm clock began to ring, Sarah pressed herself against the wall, invisible to human eyes. She watched as he stretched and yawned, completely unaware that death had stood over his bed all night and chosen to spare him. Mark got out of bed, rubbing his eyes. What a weird dream, he said to himself, walking to the bathroom. I was flying through space, talking to stars. Sarah's sensors recorded his words carefully. The connection between the energy patterns and his memory of the dream was fascinating. She needed to know more. Just a few more days of observation, she promised herself. Then she would complete her mission. But even as she thought this, a small part of her knew it was a lie. The emotionless cosmic executioner had discovered something that stirred feelings she didn't know she had. Questions began forming in her mind, questions that had never bothered her before. If humans could create entire worlds in their sleep, what else were they capable of? What was this forbidden knowledge that Mark had discovered? And most disturbing of all, why did the Council want him dead? As the morning sun filled the room, Sarah stood invisible in her corner, watching Mark prepare for his day. Her mission log remained empty, her duty unfulfilled. For the first time in her existence, she was choosing to understand rather than execute. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The human who was supposed to be her target would soon become her teacher, showing her a side of the universe she never knew existed. But for now, she simply watched and waited, recording every detail of this strange creature who could dream. Hidden emotions. Sarah had never spent so much time watching a single target. 7 Earth days had passed since she first appeared in Mark's bedroom, and each day brought new surprises that challenged everything she believed. Today, she followed him to his job at the local community center. Her invisible form moved silently through the halls as Mark talked with the children he taught. Her sensors recorded everything, but they couldn't explain the warmth in his voice or the light in his eyes when he helped a young girl solve a difficult math problem. "See, you can do it," Mark said, his smile encouraging the child. Sometimes the hardest problems just need a different way of thinking. Sarah's hand touched her chest plate unconsciously. Different ways of thinking were forbidden among the executioners. They followed the council's orders without question. Yet here was her target, teaching children to think for themselves. During his lunch break, Mark sat alone in the garden behind the center. Sarah stood nearby, watching as he pulled out a worn notebook, the very one that supposedly contained the dangerous knowledge the council feared. Her sensors focused on the pages as he opened it. But instead of forbidden cosmic secrets, she saw drawings. Page after page of sketches showing strange creatures, beautiful landscapes, and scenes that couldn't exist in reality. They were dreams, she realized. He was recording his dreams. "Still not quite right," Mark muttered, adding details to a sketch of what looked like a star taking human form. "How do you draw light that speaks?" Sarah's systems registered an unexpected malfunction. Her heart rate increased, and her armor's temperature regulation system activated without command. These were signs of emotional response, something that should have been impossible for an executioner. The afternoon brought more surprises. A crying boy ran into the community center, his knee bleeding from a fall. Mark immediately stopped what he was doing to help. Sarah watched as he cleaned the wound, put on a bandage, and then did something completely unexpected. He made the boy laugh by telling a silly story about his own childhood accidents. "Sometimes the best stories come from our worst falls," Mark told the boy. "Want to know how I got this scar on my elbow? I was convinced I could fly." Sarah's recording systems captured every word, but her mind was spinning with questions. Why help someone without orders? Why share personal weakness? Why tell stories that served no tactical purpose? As evening approached, her wrist computer blinked with an incoming message from the council. They wanted an update on her mission. Sarah stared at the blinking light for a long time before sending her response. "Target under surveillance. Gathering critical information about human cognitive abilities. Request extension for final execution." It wasn't exactly a lie, she told herself. She was gathering information. The fact that this information was making her question everything she knew about humans and herself wasn't something the council needed to know. Mark's last task of the day was teaching an evening art class for elderly humans. Sarah watched in fascination as he helped them create images of their memories. Her sensors detected high levels of oxytocin and serotonin in the room, chemicals of happiness and connection. "Art isn't about being perfect," Mark told his students. "It's about sharing what's in your heart. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from our mistakes." Another malfunction in Sarah's systems. Her visual display blurred for a moment, and she felt moisture on her cheeks inside her helmet. She reached up to touch it, confused. Executioners didn't cry. They didn't feel. They didn't question. But she was doing all three. As they walked home in the darkness, Mark stopped to help a stranger whose car had broken down. Sarah stood in the shadows, watching him work in the cold night air, refusing payment when the car finally started. "Just help someone else when they need it," he told the grateful driver. "That's all the payment I need." Back in his apartment, Mark settled down to draw more of his dreams before bed. Sarah took her usual position in the corner, but something had changed. Her armor felt heavy, restrictive. The visor that usually enhanced her vision seemed to be blocking something important. She watched him fall asleep, waited for the dream patterns to begin their familiar dance across her sensors. But tonight, she wasn't just recording data. She was wondering what it felt like to dream, to help others without reason, to create art from imagination. Her wrist computer blinked again, another message from the Council. This time, it was a warning. Mission duration exceeded standard parameters. Explain delay or be recalled for reconditioning. Sarah looked at the sleeping human, then at her trembling hands. The mighty cosmic executioner, feared across galaxies, was afraid. Not of Mark, not of the Council, but of the feelings growing inside her like a supernova ready to explode. She had to make a choice soon, but as she watched Mark smile in his sleep, caught in another dream, she realized that perhaps she already had. In the darkness of the room, Sarah did something she had never done before. She reached up and removed her helmet, letting her silver hair fall free. She wanted to see this human with her own eyes, not through the filter of her armor. She needed to understand what made him so different, so dangerous, so human. The Council was right about one thing. Mark Wilson possessed knowledge that could destroy their carefully ordered universe. But it wasn't written in his notebook or spoken in his lectures. It was in every small act of kindness, every smile, every moment of creativity and connection. The real danger wasn't what he knew. It was what he could teach others to feel. And Sarah, the perfect cosmic executioner, was already learning. The connection. It happened because of a sneeze. After 2 weeks of perfect stealth, Sarah's cover was blown by something as simple as Earth's pollen. Her armor's filtration system had started malfunctioning, another sign of her growing emotions affecting the technology linked to her body. Mark was drawing in his notebook late at night when he heard the sound. He looked up, straight at the corner where Sarah stood invisible, and frowned. "Hello, is someone there?" Sarah remained still, her training kicking in. But her armor chose that moment to flicker, its cloaking field destabilizing. For a split second, she became visible, a tall, silver-armored figure with her helmet tucked under her arm. Mark's pencil dropped from his hand. Instead of screaming or running, he just stared. "I knew I wasn't imagining things," he said softly. "You've been here for weeks, haven't you?" Sarah's training screamed at her to eliminate the target immediately. Instead, she found herself speaking. "How did you know?" "Sometimes I'd catch a reflection in my mirror that shouldn't be there, or hear breathing when I was alone." He smiled, showing no fear. "And my dreams, they've been different since you arrived. More vivid, like someone was watching them." Sarah's armor flickered again, the cloaking field failing completely. She stood exposed in the moonlight streaming through his window. "You should be afraid," she said. Mark shook his head. "If you were going to hurt me, you would have done it already." He picked up his notebook. "Want to see what I've been drawing? Some of them are about you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. He had sensed her presence in his dreams, had been drawing her. She took a hesitant step forward, then another. Her armor's warning systems blared in her ears, detecting elevated heart rate and irregular breathing patterns. Mark turned the notebook around. There she was, sketched in flowing lines, but not as she appeared now. In his drawings, she was dancing among stars, her armor transformed into flowing robes of light, her face peaceful and free. "This isn't me," she whispered. "It's who you could be," Mark replied. "I've seen you in my dreams, learning to fly, to feel, to live." Sarah's legs felt weak. Another new sensation. She sat down on the edge of his bed, her armor creaking with the movement. "The Council sent me to kill you," she admitted. "They said you had discovered forbidden knowledge that threatened the cosmic order." Mark laughed, a sound that made Sarah's heart jump. "Forbidden knowledge? You mean like the fact that every being in the universe has the capacity to feel, to love, to create?" He held up his notebook. "That's what I've been writing about. My dreams showed me that even the stars have emotions, They're just expressed differently than ours. That's impossible, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. The council says emotions make us weak, unpredictable, dangerous. Then why haven't you killed me yet? Mark asked gently. Why do you keep watching, learning, feeling? Before Sarah could answer, her wrist computer crackled to life. A holographic image appeared. Her superior officer, Commander Vex. Executioner Sarah, your behavior patterns have become erratic. Your armor reports emotional contamination. Return to base immediately for purging and reconditioning. Mark watched the hologram with fascination rather than fear. Sarah looked between him and her commander, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on her. That's an order, Executioner, Vex barked. Eliminate the target and return. Now. Sarah stood slowly, her silver hair catching the moonlight. She looked at Mark, who still showed no fear, only understanding. Then she turned to the hologram. No, she said. The word hung in the air like a suspended star. Commander Vex's face contorted with rage. What did you say? I said no. Sarah's voice grew stronger. The council is wrong. Emotions don't make us weak. They make us real. This human has shown me more truth in 2 weeks than I've learned in centuries of service. You are malfunctioning, Vex snarled. Your contamination is worse than we feared. A cleanup crew has been dispatched. They will complete your mission and bring you in for decommissioning. The hologram vanished. Mark stood up, moving closer to Sarah. Are you okay? Sarah looked at her hands, expecting to see them shaking. Instead, they were steady. They're coming to kill us both, she said. Then we better make sure they learn something when they get here. Mark picked up his notebook again. Want to know what else I've learned about the universe? About why dreams are so powerful? Sarah found herself nodding, even as her tactical systems began calculating escape routes and defense strategies. She had just defied the council, thrown away centuries of conditioning, and placed herself in mortal danger. But as she sat down to listen to Mark explain his discoveries, she realized something important. For the first time in her existence, she felt truly alive. The stars told me a secret, Mark began, his voice full of wonder. Every living thing in the universe dreams, even if they don't know it. The council doesn't forbid emotions because they're dangerous. They forbid them because emotions are the key to understanding the deepest mysteries of existence. Sarah leaned forward, her armor responding to her curiosity by shifting into a more comfortable configuration. Tell me everything, she said. Behind them, the moon cast their shadows on the wall. The warrior and the dreamer, about to change the universe forever. They had until dawn before the cleanup crew arrived. Until then, there were truths to share, emotions to explore, and dreams to understand. And maybe, just maybe, a way to show the council that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't order or control. It was the simple ability to feel. Breaking protocol. Dawn was approaching, and Sarah's armor was failing. Piece by piece, the silvery metal that had been her second skin for centuries was becoming unresponsive. She sat cross-legged on Mark's floor, watching in fascination as cracks of soft blue light appeared along her arm plates. Your emotions are affecting the armor's neural links, Mark observed, sketching rapidly in his notebook. It's like watching a star being born. Or dying. Sarah muttered, wincing as another piece of shoulder plating disconnected. Her wrist computer still worked, though, and it was flooded with incoming messages from the council. She ignored them all. Not dying, Mark said firmly. Transforming. He turned his notebook to show her the new sketch. Her armor splitting open like a chrysalis, light pouring out. This is what I saw in my dreams. The stars showed me that change isn't destruction. It's evolution. A sudden alert from Sarah's remaining tactical systems made them both freeze. They're here, she whispered. 3 council ships just entered Earth's atmosphere. Instead of panicking, Mark smiled. Perfect timing. Want to learn about music? Sarah blinked in confusion. The cleanup crew is coming to kill us, and you want to teach me about music. Trust me, Mark walked to his old record player, a device Sarah had observed with curiosity but never understood. He pulled out a vinyl record, handling it with careful reverence. The council thinks they understand the universe because they can measure and control it. But some things can't be measured. They have to be felt. The needle touched the record, and sound filled the room. Sarah's remaining sensors tried desperately to analyze the patterns, but they couldn't capture the essence of what she was hearing. It was beautiful, painful, joyful, sad, all at once. "This is Mozart's Symphony No. 40, Mark explained, watching her face. "Listen to how the instruments talk to each other, how they weave together to tell a story without words." Sarah closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her. More pieces of her armor cracked and fell away, but she barely noticed. The music was doing something to her that no weapon ever had. It was reaching inside and touching her soul. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. I can't stop it," she said, touching the wetness in wonder. "Those aren't tears of weakness," Mark said softly. "They're tears of awakening. The stars cry too. We just call it stardust." The music swelled, and with it, Sarah felt something burst inside her chest. Suddenly, she could feel everything. The vibrations of the earth spinning through space, the pulse of life in every plant and creature around them, the invisible threads connecting all things. Her wrist computer sparked and died as the last of her armor's control systems overloaded. The pieces that had fallen away were dissolving into particles of light, floating around her like a galaxy being born. "The council was right to fear this," she whispered, "but not because it's dangerous. Because once you feel it, you can never go back to being what you were." Mark nodded, adding details to his sketch. "That's why they sent their best executioner. They knew that if anyone could understand the truth, it would be someone who had suppressed their emotions for so long that feeling them again would be like a supernova." A violent tremor shook the building. The cleanup crew was getting closer. Sarah stood, surprised by how light she felt without her armor. She was wearing simple black clothing underneath, standard issue for executioners, but it felt different now, more real. "We need to leave," she said. "The cleanup crew will destroy this entire building to eliminate us." "Not yet," Mark said calmly, still drawing. "There's one more thing you need to understand. Watch." He held up his notebook, showing her the completed sketch. It was them, surrounded by music notes that had taken the form of cosmic energy patterns. But there was something else, faint shapes in the background. "I don't understand," Sarah said, squinting at the drawing. "Look harder," Mark urged. "What do you see in the shadows?" Sarah leaned closer, and suddenly she saw them. Other executioners, their armor beginning to crack, light seeping through. "How?" "The stars showed me," Mark explained as another tremor rocked the building. "You're not the first executioner to feel. Others have discovered emotions before, but the council erased them, recycled them, made examples of them. That's why they fear this knowledge spreading, because it's happening more frequently now. The universe itself is waking up." Sarah's remaining tactical training screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But the music was still playing, and in it, she heard a truth that no amount of council conditioning could erase. "They're coming," she said, hearing the heavy footsteps of the cleanup crew entering the building. "But they're not just coming for us, are they? They're coming because they're afraid of what we represent." Mark stood, tucking his notebook into his jacket. Every revolution starts with a single person choosing to feel rather than obey. He held out his hand to her, ready to teach the council about the power of music. Sarah took his hand, feeling the warmth of human touch without armor for the first time. Above them, the ceiling creaked as heavy boots approached. The cleanup crew was moments away, but Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. The music was still playing, her armor had become stardust, and she could feel the truth vibrating in every atom around them. Emotions weren't weakness, they were the force that bound the universe together. "Yes," she said, squeezing Mark's hand. "Let's show them what happens when you try to execute a feeling." The door burst open, and 3 armored figures entered, weapons raised. But they hesitated when they saw Sarah standing there, her armor gone, surrounded by particles of light that danced in time with Mozart's symphony. And in that moment of hesitation, Sarah saw it, the tiniest crack of light appearing in their armor too. The revolution had begun. The choice. The 3 members of the cleanup crew stood frozen in the doorway, their black armor a stark contrast to the dancing lights surrounding Sarah. Mozart's symphony continued to play, filling the tense silence with its haunting melody. "Executioner Sarah," the lead figure spoke, voice distorted through their helmet. "Your corruption is worse than reported. Stand down for immediate termination." But Sarah wasn't looking at their weapons. She was looking at the tiny cracks of light beginning to show in their armor, hairline fractures that pulsed in time with the music. "Remove your helmets," she said softly. "Feel the music. You know you want to." Silence. The lead executioner's voice cracked with something that sounded suspiciously like fear. "The target has infected you with emotional contamination. You are malfunctioning." Mark stepped forward, his notebook held against his chest like a shield. "She's not malfunctioning. She's awakening, just like you're starting to." The second executioner raised their weapon, but their hand was shaking. "The council warned us about this. They said the human's voice could corrupt even the most loyal servants." "The council lied," Sarah said, letting go of Mark's hand and walking toward her former colleagues. They'd been lying for centuries. About emotions, about humans, about the very nature of the universe. She gestured to the stardust that had once been her armor. "Look at me. I'm not corrupted. I'm free." The third executioner, who had remained silent, suddenly reached up and touched their own chest plate where a crack of blue light had appeared. "It hurts," they whispered. "Not hurt," Mark said gently. "Growth. Change always feels uncomfortable at first. The stars taught me that too." A new voice filled the room. "Commander Vex, broadcasting through all 3 executioners' comm systems. Eliminate them immediately. Their corruption is spreading." The lead executioner raised their weapon again, but Sarah saw the tremor in their stance. The music had reached them too, working its way through the cracks in their emotional armor. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked. The music, the connection, the truth that the council tried to bury under centuries of conditioning. We're not meant to be empty vessels. We're meant to feel. "Stop talking." The lead executioner's voice was strained. More cracks appeared in their armor, leaking soft light. Mark opened his notebook and held up a new sketch, one he had drawn while they were talking. It showed all 3 cleanup crew members with their armor falling away, revealing their true selves beneath. But what made the executioners gasp was how accurate it was. He had drawn their faces perfectly, even though they still wore their helmets. "How?" the second executioner demanded. "How can you know our faces?" "Because I've dreamed them," Mark explained, "just like I dreamed of Sarah. The stars show me the truth beneath all masks. They want you to be free." The third executioner suddenly dropped their weapon. It clattered to the floor as they reached up and removed their helmet, revealing a young face with silver hair like Sarah's. I remember," they whispered. "Before the council, before the conditioning, I remember feeling." "Traitor," Commander Vex's voice boomed. "Execute them all." But the second executioner was removing their helmet too, tears streaming down their face as Mozart's symphony reached its emotional peak. The music, it's like the Song of Stars. Only the lead executioner remained armed and helmeted, but they were shaking visibly now. The council will. "The council is afraid," Sarah said, standing directly in front of their weapon. "Because they know that once we start feeling, once we understand the true power of emotions, their control over us ends." "Stand down, Executioner Sarah," they ordered, but their weapon was lowering. Sarah shook her head. "That's not my name anymore." Sarah was the label they gave to their perfect killing machine. but I'm more than that now. We all are. The lead executioner's armor was cracking faster now, light pouring from every seam. They tried to raise their weapon one last time, but it fell from their trembling hands. "Make it stop," they pleaded. "I can't," Sarah said gently, "because it's not something being done to you. It's something awakening inside you, something that was always there." With shaking hands, the lead executioner reached up and removed their helmet. Their face was older, scared, but their eyes were young with wonder as they truly felt for the first time in centuries. Commander Vex's voice came again, but this time it held a note of panic. "What have you done?" "The contamination. It's spreading through the entire execution corps. Executioners across the galaxy are reporting emotional awakening. This is impossible." Mark smiled, adding final touches to his sketch. "Not impossible. Inevitable. Because you can't execute an emotion. You can't kill a feeling. And once one person starts feeling, truly feeling, it spreads like starlight through the darkness." Sarah looked at her 3 former colleagues, all now free of their helmets, all experiencing the overwhelming rush of emotional awakening. The Council thought they could control the universe by controlling our feelings. But they forgot something important. What did they forget? The youngest executioner asked, touching their own tears in wonder. Sarah smiled as Mozart's symphony finally ended, leaving behind a silence full of possibility. They forgot that the universe itself feels. Every star, every planet, every particle of cosmic dust experiences emotion in its own way. We weren't becoming contaminated. We were finally aligning with the true nature of existence. Commander Vex's voice came one last time, weak and distant. "You've doomed us all." "No," Sarah said, taking Mark's hand again. "We've freed us all." The room fell silent except for the soft sounds of armor continuing to crack and fall away. 4 former executioners and 1 human dreamer stood in a circle of stardust and hope, feeling the pulse of the universe in their awakened hearts. But their victory celebration was premature. In the distance, they could hear the sound of more ships entering Earth's atmosphere. The Council wasn't going to let their perfect soldiers slip away without a fight. Sarah looked at Mark, then at her newly awakened companions. "Are you ready to show the Council what emotionally awakened executioners can really do?" Their answers came not in words, but in the brilliant light that burst from their breaking armor, turning the small apartment into a beacon that could be seen from space. The real battle was about to begin, and this time they would be fighting with their hearts fully open to the power of feeling. Rebellion. The night sky above Earth blazed with approaching Council ships, their black hulls blocking out the stars. In Mark's apartment, now filled with stardust from broken armor, 5 figures stood watching through the window as humanity's first contact with the Council drew near. "They're deploying the suppression fleet," the oldest of the former executioners, who had introduced himself as Kane, said grimly. "I've only seen them use it once before, when an entire star system started developing collective consciousness." "What happened to that system?" the youngest, Nova, asked. Kane's scared face darkened. "The Council said they saved it from emotional corruption. Now I wonder if they just killed something beautiful before it could teach others to feel." Sarah stood at the window, her silver hair reflecting the emergency lights that had started flashing across the city. Without her armor, she could feel everything more intensely: the fear in the air, the confusion of humans seeing alien ships, the determination of her fellow awakened executioners. Mark was sketching frantically in his notebook. "The stars are screaming," he muttered. "They're trying to warn us about something." The 3rd former executioner, Ada, moved to look at his drawing. Her own armor had crumbled to reveal the elaborate tattoos that marked her as one of the Council's elite hunters. "Those patterns, they're not just ships up there, are they?" Mark shook his head, showing them his sketch. It revealed the Council fleet arranged in a massive geometric pattern. "They're creating an emotional dampening field. They're going to try to suppress every feeling on the planet." "They can't," Sarah said, But uncertainty crept into her voice. There are billions of humans, all feeling, all dreaming. Which is exactly what terrifies them, Kane growled. Humanity's capacity for emotion is unlike anything in the known universe. That's why they sent executioners to eliminate anyone who started understanding the true nature of cosmic consciousness. Suddenly, the room temperature dropped. A wave of numbness washed over them as the first phase of the dampening field activated. Outside, they could hear people stopping in the streets, their voices becoming flat and emotionless. No, Nova pressed her hands against her chest. They're trying to make us forget how to feel. Mark grabbed his record player and turned it on. Mozart filled the room again, fighting against the creeping coldness of the Council's technology. Music is mathematics and emotion combined, he explained quickly. It's the language stars use to communicate. They can't suppress it completely. Sarah felt the numbness trying to creep back into her heart, but the music helped her resist. We need to show them what they're trying to destroy. Not just humans feeling, but the entire universe feeling with them. She turned to her fellow former executioners. Remember your training. Before they taught us to suppress emotion, they taught us to channel energy. What if we channel feelings instead? Kane's eyes widened. The quantum resonance patterns, they're the same frequency as emotional energy. That's why they made us suppress our feelings, because they could be weaponized. Not weaponized, Mark corrected, still drawing. Harmonized. Look, his sketch showed their small group forming a circle, their emotional energy connecting with the music, creating a counter-resonance to the Council's dampening field. But more importantly, it showed streams of light connecting them to every dreaming human on the planet. We can't fight the Council with their own tactics, Sarah realized. We have to show them what they've forgotten. The power of feeling isn't in controlling it. It's in sharing it. Ada finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. The room grew colder as the dampening field intensified. Outside, people were starting to collapse, their emotions being forcibly suppressed. The Council's voice boomed across the sky. Tim Chyan Earth Population. You are being saved from Ednimo to Uonail to Orupty. Resistance is. The message cut off as Sarah grabbed Mark's hand, then Nova's. The others quickly completed the circle. Mozart's symphony reached its crescendo as they closed their eyes, remembering every feeling they'd experienced since awakening. Mark's voice guided them. Feel everything. The joy of your first laugh, the wonder of your first tear, the warmth of connection, the pain of growth, the beauty of being alive. Feel it all, and let it flow through you like starlight. Sarah felt it building inside her, not just her own emotions, but echoes of every human dream, every star song, every pulse of life in the universe. The others felt it too, their bodies beginning to glow with the same light that had emerged from their broken armor. The dampening field pressed down, trying to smother their feelings, but the music grew louder. Not just Mozart now, but a symphony of human emotion. Billions of hearts beating in defiance of the cold. They're trying to execute our feelings, Sarah said, her voice ringing with power. But you can't execute what makes the universe itself alive. Light exploded from their circle, shattering windows and shooting into the sky. It connected with the dreams of sleeping humans, the songs of distant stars, the deep emotional currents that flowed between galaxies. The dampening field crackled and sparked, trying to suppress an ocean of feeling with mere technology. In orbit, Council ships began to show cracks of light. Inside them, more executioners were awakening, their suppressed emotions surging forth like solar flares. The geometric pattern of the fleet began to break apart. Stop this, the Council commanded, but their voice shook with something they had forbidden for eons. Fear. What you are doing. We understand perfectly, Sarah called back, her voice carried on waves of pure emotional energy. We understand that the universe isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be felt. The dampening field shattered like glass. Light poured from every human, every awakened executioner, every star visible in the sky. The council ships retreated, but it was too late. The emotional awakening was spreading faster than light itself. Mark kept drawing, his hands moving at impossible speed as he captured the moment of universal rebellion. "The stars are singing," he whispered. "Listen." And in that moment, everyone could hear it. The music of an emotionally awakened cosmos, playing a symphony that the council had tried to silence since the beginning of time. But this wasn't the end. As the light began to fade and their circle broke apart, Sarah knew the council would return. They had too much invested in their system of control to let it go easily. "What happens now?" Nova asked, still glowing faintly. Sarah looked at Mark, who was adding final touches to his sketch of their rebellion. "Now we show the council that their greatest fear is actually their greatest hope, a universe where every being is free to feel, to dream, to love." "And if they refuse to understand?" Kane asked. Sarah smiled, taking Mark's hand again. "Then we teach them, one emotion at a time. Because that's what humans do best. They share their feelings until even the coldest heart remembers how to beat." Above them, the stars pulsed with new light, singing the song of revolution that would echo through every corner of the cosmos. The war for the right to feel had begun. And this time, they had the entire emotional universe on their side. Final stand. The council's response came at dawn. The sky turned black as their entire enforcement fleet, thousands of ships, emerged from hyperspace. But they weren't alone. Behind them, countless stars pulsed with unusual brightness, as if watching the coming battle. "They've brought the emotional purge protocol," Ada said, her tattoos glowing with residual energy from their earlier rebellion. "They're going to try to reset the entire sector." Mark sat cross-legged on his apartment floor, surrounded by drawings that seemed to move in the strange light. The stars say this was always coming. The moment when the universe would have to choose between control and feeling. Sarah stood at the window, watching more executioners' ships land around the city. But these weren't coming to attack. Their armor was already cracking, light pouring from within as they chose awakening over obedience. "How many?" Kane asked, his scared face reflected in the glass. "Thousands," Sarah replied. "Maybe more. Every executioner who ever doubted, who ever felt a flicker of emotion. They're all awakening now." Nova, the youngest, was helping Mark organize his drawings. "But the council still has millions of unawakened executioners. And the purge protocol. Tell them what it does," Sarah said quietly. "They need to know what we're facing." Eda's voice was grim. "The purge protocol doesn't just suppress emotions, it erases them completely. Rewrites the very fabric of space-time to remove the capacity for feeling. The council's ultimate weapon against emotional corruption." Mark held up a new drawing, a sketch of what looked like a wave of darkness consuming light. "The stars are afraid," he said, "not for themselves, but for us, for all feeling beings." The ground shook as the council's message boomed across Earth. "A tame rebellious humites, and idngum otion ale intities. You have one final chance to is as you begumit for resion dhionang. Resist, and dias cc2r. What'll be per gd of all emotional ca pesativi." Sarah turned to her companions, her friends, she realized. That's what they had become. They're desperate. They know that if Earth's emotional awakening spreads, their control over the universe ends. But why? Nova asked. Why do they fear emotions so much? It was Mark who answered, his hands moving quickly across a new page. Because emotions are the only force in the universe they can't predict or control. Love, hope, courage. They operate outside the laws of physics. That terrifies them. Kane moved to the window as more awakened executioners gathered in the streets below. We can't let them activate the purge protocol. But how do we stop the entire Council fleet? Sarah watched the stars pulse behind the Council's ships, and suddenly she understood. We don't fight them, she said. We show them what they've been missing, what the universe has been trying to teach them all along. She turned to Mark. Your drawings, they're not just art, are they? They're maps. The stars have been showing you how emotions flow through the universe. Mark nodded, spreading out his sketches. Together, they formed a pattern. A vast network of emotional energy that connected everything in existence. Every feeling creates a ripple, he explained. Every dream adds to the pattern. The Council thinks they can erase emotions, but they're trying to erase the fundamental force that binds the universe together. The sky darkened further as the purge protocol began charging. They could feel it, a creeping emptiness that tried to hollow out their hearts. Sarah looked at her fellow awakened executioners. Remember what we learned when we first felt. How it wasn't weakness, but the greatest strength we'd ever known. They nodded, their eyes bright with understanding. The Council thinks emotions make us vulnerable, she continued. But what if that vulnerability is exactly what we need? What if we open ourselves completely, not just to our own feelings, but to the emotional energy of the entire universe? Ada's tattoos flared brighter. You're talking about using ourselves as conductors, channeling not just human emotions, but everything. Mark finished, adding final touches to his pattern. Every joy, every sorrow, every dream and hope and fear in existence. The pure, raw power of a feeling universe. The Purge Protocol's charge reached critical levels. Above them, the Council ships began to glow with dark energy. Purge unitializatio. In 1 minute, the Council announced. Submit, or BECLENSED. Sarah took Mark's hand, then reached for Nova. Around the world, other awakened executioners joined hands with humans. They want us to submit, she called out. Let's submit to every emotion we've ever suppressed, every feeling we were told to ignore, everything that makes us gloriously, beautifully alive. The Purge Protocol fired, sending a wave of emotional void toward Earth. But as it approached, something extraordinary happened. Every human on the planet began to dream. Awake or asleep, they all slipped into the same vision. Every awakened executioner's light blazed brighter than ever, and in space, the stars themselves pulsed in harmony. Mark's drawings began to glow, the pattern of universal emotional energy becoming visible to everyone. Feel everything, he shouted. Don't hold anything back. Sarah felt it first, not just her own emotions, but Mark's creativity, Nova's wonder, Cain's hard-won wisdom, Ada's fierce joy and freedom. Then more, the love of parents for their children, the dreams of artists, the hopes of scientists, the pure emotional energy of 6 billion humans. But it didn't stop there. The stars added their ancient songs of creation. Planets contributed the slow, deep emotions of geological time. Even the void between worlds offered its own kind of feeling, the yearning of empty space to be filled with light. The Purge Protocol's wave of darkness met this tsunami of pure emotional energy. For a moment, the two forces hung in perfect balance. Then the Council's voice came again, but this time it was different, shocked, almost wondering. What? What is this? This is what you tried to destroy, Sarah called back, her voice carrying on waves of light. This is what happens when you stop executing emotions and start experiencing them. The Purge Protocol began to crack. Dark energy shot through with threads of light. In orbit, Council ships sparked as their crews, all executioners, began to awaken. You can't erase emotions, Mark added, his drawings now floating in the air, showing the pattern of feeling that connected all things. They're not a flaw in the universe. They're its greatest masterpiece. The dark wave shattered completely, transformed into pure light that washed back over the Council fleet. Ship after ship began to glow as their crews chose feeling over emptiness. But the Council had one last card to play. Their command ship broke orbit, preparing to escape and regroup. They would rather retreat than risk emotional awakening. Sarah looked at her companions, then at all the awakened executioners and dreaming humans below. Together, she said simply. As one, they opened their hearts completely, sending every emotion they had ever felt toward the fleeing Council. Not in attack, but in offering. Not to destroy, but to awaken. The command ship froze in space as the wave hit it. For a moment, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, from the Council's ship, came a sound that had never been heard before in the history of their rule. Laughter. Pure, joyous, wondering laughter. The revolution wasn't one with weapons or violence. It was one with the simple, unstoppable power of feeling. And as the Council's own awakening began, the stars pulsed with triumph, singing a song of emotion that would never be silenced again. But even in victory, Sarah knew their work was just beginning. The universe was awakening to its own heart, and it would need guides to help it understand this new way of being. She looked at Mark, who was already sketching the next chapter of their story, ready to teach the cosmos how to feel. His smile was all the answer she needed. Above them, the stars danced with newfound emotion, celebrating the day that feeling finally triumphed over fear.